The galaxy had lived in peace for millennia. Different species, human and non-human alike, had long since established their roles in a complex system of diplomacy and trade. The galaxy had no need for revolutions or upheaval. Each race held their territories, their spheres of influence, and the delicate balance of power had been in place for as long as anyone could remember. But all of that was about to change. Humanity had always been an enigma to the rest of the galaxy. Their species was young, unrefined, and often underestimated. The major galactic powers, the Sirith Dominion, the Vorn Empire, and the Thalazan Coalition, had long watched humans with quiet amusement. They had watched them rise from the primitive conditions of their homeworld, Earth, to becoming a small but industrious presence on the galactic stage. Still, they were a curiosity at best and a minor threat at worst. At least, that was the prevailing opinion until the day humanity did the impossible. Captain Ileana Carter stood at the helm of the Sovereign, humanity's most advanced starship. It wasn't a ship built for diplomacy or peacekeeping. It was a warship, forged in the crucible of humanity's desperate survival against alien threats. It was the pride of Earth's military and a symbol of their resilience. And now, it was humanity's hope in the face of an unimaginable crisis. The Thalazan Coalition had made a bold move. A galactic-wide trade embargo, supported by the Sirith Dominion, had been enacted, and the Vorn Empire had thrown its full weight behind it. The embargo was a statement. Humans had become too powerful, too influential for their own good, and it was time to put them back in their place. But the Sovereign had been sent to the heart of the galaxy to broker peace, and now it was caught in the middle of a storm. High above the planet Vornith, a strategically crucial system that had been controlled by the Vorn Empire for centuries, the Sovereign found itself surrounded by the fleets of the three most powerful races in the galaxy. And then, the unthinkable happened. A signal encrypted and unfamiliar was received. It had come from deep space, from a region known as the Void, a place where no one ventured. The signal was a warning. There was an imminent threat to the galaxy itself. It was clear, cold, and filled with urgency. A weapon of unimaginable power had been discovered, and it was heading toward the galaxy. For a brief moment, Ileana Carter and her crew shared a collective sense of disbelief. The threat was real, and it was devastating. If the weapon, whatever it was allowed to reach its destination, nothing in the galaxy would survive. It would make every war, every battle, every struggle meaningless. What do we do now? Lieutenant Connor Drayden asked, his voice strained with disbelief. Ileana stood motionless, staring at the star charts on the display. The edges of the galaxy were aflame with danger, and her mission had just shifted. The political alliances, the trade deals, the power struggles, they all seemed insignificant in comparison to this new threat. She turned to her crew, her face hardening. We fight. We don't negotiate with them. We stop this weapon from reaching its target. The crew members exchanged uncertain glances. It seemed impossible. The combined might of the Thalazan, Sirith, and Vorn was enough to overwhelm humanity's fleet 100 times over. But Ileana knew something they didn't. Humans had a unique capacity for survival. Against all odds, humanity had the ability to pull off the impossible. With a glance at her tactical officer, she barked orders. Set a course for the Void. We don't have time to waste. And so, as the Sovereign sped toward the unknown, the rest of the galaxy held its breath. No one knew what the future held, but one thing was certain. Humanity was about to do the impossible. The Sovereign cut through the dark expanse of space, its sleek, powerful frame slicing through the endless void with a hum of barely contained energy. On board, a palpable tension hung in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Ileana Carter stood at the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back as her eyes scanned the vastness of space, now filled with the scattered debris of a once orderly galaxy. It had been hours since they had received the encrypted signal, and though they were still light years away from the Void, the situation had already begun to feel different. Captain, we're picking up an anomaly, Lieutenant Drayden spoke. his voice laced with the kind of uncertainty that only emerged when dealing with things too strange to understand. It's a gravitational distortion, unlike anything in our database. It's huge. Ileana's pulse quickened. Define huge. Drayden's fingers danced over the console, running calculations. It's big enough to pull ships into its orbit, Captain. Whatever this thing is, it's powerful. Ileana's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. The signal they had received was a warning, but it also felt like a trap. Someone had lured them into the heart of the galaxy with the promise of an imminent threat, and now they were headed straight for a gravitational anomaly. But why? Was this the weapon? Or was there something even more insidious at play? Plot a course around it, Ileana ordered, her voice sharp. I'm not taking any chances. Captain, we're not going to make it to the void in time if we keep avoiding every anomaly, Drayden protested. The gravitational force is already affecting our engines. We need to make a decision, now. The crew held their breath, watching Ileana as she considered the options. The clock was ticking. They could feel it, the growing sense of impending doom. The anomaly seemed like a direct threat, yet the void was where the weapon was supposed to be. The risk of avoiding it was greater than the risk of confronting it head-on. Go straight through it, Ileana said, her voice steely with resolve. All hands brace for impact. The Sovereign lurched forward as its engines fired with full thrust, pushing through the distortion. The crew was slammed back into their seats as the ship's gravity wells struggled to keep up with the rapid acceleration, the stars outside the viewport stretching and warping into long streaks of light. Moments later, the ship emerged on the other side of the distortion, only to be met by a sight that took every breath from every person aboard. A massive structure floated in the void before them, vast and incomprehensible, an impossibility in itself. Its jagged edges seemed to defy the laws of physics, its surface covered in a shimmering, dark metal that reflected no light, yet pulsed with a sickly, eerie glow. The object was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, yet its design was disturbingly familiar to Ileana. It resembled a long-forgotten piece of ancient technology, a weapon, perhaps, created by an ancient race that had once ruled the galaxy. What is that? Drayden whispered, his voice barely audible. Ileana's mind raced. Could this be the weapon? Had they found it? Or was it something even worse? Something not just capable of destroying planets, but perhaps capable of reshaping the very fabric of space itself? Scan it, Ileana ordered, trying to mask the unease creeping into her voice. Everything. I want to know everything about this structure. The tactical officer, Ensign Zhang, began running a series of scans. But then, a chilling report crackled through the comms. Captain, there's something strange happening, Zhang said, her voice laced with anxiety. We're not getting any readings. The scans aren't returning anything tangible. It's like the structure is blocking us. Ileana's blood ran cold. There were no power readings, no heat signatures. It was as if the object wasn't even there, but somehow it still existed. She was no stranger to the unexplained, but this was something else. That's impossible, Ileana muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a voice, distorted and eerie, reverberating through the ship's comm system. It was low, mechanical, and filled with the weight of centuries. Humanity, the voice echoed, chilling them all to the core. You are too late. The galaxy is already ours. The voice went silent. Ileana stood frozen, her thoughts scrambling to process what had just happened. It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration. But who or what had spoken? Activate shields. Prepare for combat. Ileana shouted. Her hands tightened around the armrest of her chair as the crew rushed to their posts. The Sovereign's weapons came online, their energy cannons glowing bright, but the mysterious structure before them remained motionless. And then, out of nowhere, something moved. A surge of energy that sent a shockwave throughout the ship, rocking it to its very core. A blast of pure energy, tearing through the fabric of space, hit the Sovereign with devastating force. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring as the hull buckled under the strain. The viewports cracked under the pressure, and the crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. But there was no time for repairs. The voice had warned them. The galaxy was already lost, and humanity had walked into the heart of the storm. The Sovereign groaned as it fought to maintain integrity. Alarms screamed through the halls, and the ship's crew scrambled to make sense of the chaos that had erupted around them. Ileana stood at the command deck, the trembling hands of her crew barely visible through the haze of urgency. The blast had shaken the ship to its core, but the worst had yet to come. Status report. Ileana barked, trying to maintain composure despite the dread gnawing at her insides. Drayden's voice cut through the cacophony of alarms. Hull breach on decks 3 and 5, Captain. We've lost 2 primary energy conduits. Shield efficiency is at 50% and falling. We can't take another hit like that. Ileana's eyes scanned the flickering displays, taking in the ship's deteriorating condition. The Sovereign wasn't designed for this. It was a warship, yes, but it wasn't invincible, not against this kind of force. The blast had come out of nowhere, a sudden surge of energy that bypassed their shields like they weren't even there. Worse still, that eerie voice, mechanical and cold, lingered in her mind, its promise echoing through the ship like an omen. Captain, you need to see this. Zhang's voice crackled through the intercom, cutting through Ileana's thoughts. Without hesitation, Ileana moved to the tactical station. Zhang was already running another scan, but her face was pale, her expression tight with fear. What is it? Ileana demanded. Zhang looked up, her hands trembling. It's not a weapon. Or, at least, it's not like any weapon we've ever encountered. Captain, we've been scanning for any signs of energy emissions, radiation signatures, anything to help us understand what this thing is. But what we found is not possible. Ileana felt a chill spread down her spine. What do you mean? Zhang pointed to the readouts, her voice low. The structure, it's not alive, Captain. At least, not in any way we can understand. It's not a ship, it's not a station, it's a gate. Ileana blinked. A gate? To where? Zhang paused. I don't know. But it's generating a transdimensional field. There are rifts forming around it, thinning the fabric of space itself. And that voice, she swallowed, clearly shaken. It's coming from inside the gate, from somewhere else. A realization struck Ileana like a punch to the gut. This is no weapon. It's a portal. And that voice? It's not just a warning. It's an invitation. Suddenly, the deck lurched again as another shockwave hit the ship, stronger this time. Sparks flew from consoles, and the ship groaned again, as though it were on the brink of collapse. Ileana steadied herself against the command chair. We're not going to survive this unless we understand who or what we're dealing with. We don't have much time. Drayden's voice came over the comms again. Captain, whatever's inside that gate is pushing through. We're getting movement, massive movement, from within. It's not just energy. It's like the fabric of reality itself is starting to unravel. Ileana's mind raced. They were dealing with something ancient, something that predated everything in the galaxy. A transdimensional entity, something that could bend the very laws of physics and spacetime. This wasn't just a threat to humanity. It was a threat to everything in the galaxy. The voice had said it was already ours. That meant they had been here for far longer than humanity had even begun to understand. The ancient powers that once ruled the galaxy, the ones who vanished without a trace, had known about this. They had sealed it away, hidden it in the void. But now it was waking up. Raise the shield to full power. Ileana snapped. And prepare for battle. We'll either destroy this thing or we'll die trying. The crew moved quickly, their movements frantic but coordinated. The Sovereign's shields flickered to life, their energy sputtering but holding for the moment. Still, the magnitude of the danger they faced weighed heavily on everyone aboard. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Ileana turned to Drayden, her voice steady but resolute. Send a distress signal to Earth. We need backup, but I don't know if anyone will make it in time. As Drayden sent the message, Ileana's eyes returned to the strange structure. A shiver ran through her. That thing was no mere threat. It was an extinction-level force. The Sovereign moved closer to the rift, its engines firing with every ounce of power they could muster. Ileana could feel the pressure building in her chest as the gravitational distortion grew stronger. The gate was pulling them in, its transdimensional energy becoming impossible to ignore. And then, just as they reached the outer edge of the rift, a flood of energy surged out of the structure. The ship shuddered under the strain as the distortion twisted the very fabric of the air around them. The hull groaned in protest, and the lights flickered once more. "Brace for impact," Ileana shouted, slamming her hand against the emergency controls. In that moment, the rift opened wide, and a massive shape emerged from within. It was a creature, or perhaps a thing, too vast and alien to comprehend. Its form was almost liquid, shifting and flowing like the essence of space itself. Its tendrils reached out like cosmic serpents, stretching toward the Sovereign with an otherworldly hunger. The crew froze in terror as the massive entity surrounded them, its form coiling around the ship like a predator wrapping its claws around its prey. It was not a beast to be fought. It was something beyond their understanding, an ancient entity that had existed long before humanity or any of the galaxy's powers had even formed. The creature's voice echoed through the comms again, impossibly deep and resonant, as if it were speaking from the very depths of the universe itself. "You are the last ones," it intoned, "the last of your kind to stand before me." The creature loomed before the Sovereign, its tendrils stretching and pulsing like a living nightmare. The very fabric of space around it seemed to warp, bending and twisting under its immense power. The stars in the distance flickered and dimmed, as though the creature itself were consuming the light, casting everything in shadow. Ileana Carter stood frozen in her chair, her gaze locked on the monstrous entity filling the viewscreen. The crew around her was silent, awestruck and terrified. The voice that had spoken moments earlier still reverberated in her mind, its tone grave and infinite. "You are the last ones." The words echoed with a finality that left no room for argument, no hope for negotiation. Ileana's breath caught in her throat. Was this the end? The galaxy had existed for countless millennia. Many civilizations had risen and fallen, but never before had something so ancient, so incomprehensible, returned. "We can't just sit here," Drayden muttered, his voice barely audible. He clenched his fists, his gaze shifting nervously between the creature and Ileana. "Captain, what do we do? We can't fight that thing. We can't even comprehend it." Ileana turned toward him, her face hardening with resolve. "We survive. We always survive." Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. This entity, this being, was clearly far beyond anything humanity had ever faced. The galactic powers, with all their might and technology, had avoided this kind of confrontation for millennia. But humanity was different. Humanity wasn't like the ancient empires. They didn't have centuries of power or an unshakable history. They had something else. They had determination, the kind of grit that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, refused to surrender. "I don't know what this thing is," Ileana said slowly, her voice steady despite the fear thrumming in her veins. "But I do know one thing: we don't die today. We fight." Drayden looked at her, uncertainty still etched on his face, but something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of hope. And then, with a determined nod, he turned back to his station. "Aye, Captain. We'll fight." "Prepare weapons," Ileana commanded, turning to Zhang. "Tactical analysis. What are we dealing with?" Zhang's fingers flew across the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. But then, her face went pale. "Captain, we can't. It's like it's not even here," she stammered, looking up with terror in her eyes. "It's outside of our spacetime. Our weapons won't even reach it. It's in another dimension, another reality. This isn't just some warship we're dealing with. This is something far older, far more advanced." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. No weapon, no starship, no technology in the galaxy could harm this being. They were completely and utterly outmatched. But then a thought flickered in Ileana's mind, one born of desperation and instinct. "If it's outside of our space-time," she swallowed hard. "We have to get closer. Ileana said, her voice suddenly urgent. If it's a rift, if this thing is a gate, then we have to get inside it. We can't fight it in this dimension, but maybe we can fight it in its dimension. The crew stared at her, wide-eyed. Drayden opened his mouth to protest, but Ileana was already moving, her hands flying over the console, punching in commands with a fierce determination. Set a course for the center of the rift, she said firmly. We're going in. But Captain, Jean blurted, horrified. You can't be serious. We don't know what's in there. If we go inside, we might not ever come back. Ileana locked eyes with her tactical officer. Then we go in prepared to make sure we do come back. We survive. That's the only thing I know for sure. Drayden was at her side now, a sharp focus in his eyes. We've faced impossible odds before, Captain. What's one more? He punched in a series of commands into his station. Course set. But if we're going in, we'll need to make sure the Sovereign can survive whatever happens on the other side. Ileana gave a sharp nod. Do it. The crew worked quickly, rerouting power and adjusting the ship's systems to prepare for the unknown. They had no idea what lay beyond the rift, but they didn't have a choice. The enemy outside was unstoppable, and the only way to survive was to face it in the very heart of its domain. As the Sovereign inched closer to the rift, the dark, pulsing shape of the creature before them seemed to grow, its tendrils reaching toward them as if sensing their impending approach. The voice boomed again, low and foreboding. You cannot escape. You cannot hide. You will join the many who have failed before you. Ileana's grip tightened on the chair. We'll see about that, she muttered. With a final surge of the Sovereign's engines, the ship blasted through the rift, its hull shaking as it entered the swirling chaos of the other side. The stars outside twisted into strange, unnatural shapes as the very laws of physics seemed to bend and shatter. The sensation was disorienting, a dizzying mix of vertigo and weightlessness, but Ileana held her ground, staring ahead at the unknown ahead of them. And then they emerged. The scene that greeted them was something beyond comprehension. The void before them was not empty, far from it. It was filled with massive structures, vast and alien, suspended in an endless abyss. Strange, floating cities drifted by, their designs too intricate and bizarre for the human mind to fully process. And there, in the distance, was the entity, its form more tangible now, its tendrils moving through space like extensions of the very fabric of the universe. In this place, reality itself seemed to unravel. It was as though they had entered a realm where time and space didn't exist the way they understood it. The creature had been waiting for them, and now they were inside its domain. Ileana's voice broke the silence. Prepare for the impossible. The Sovereign hung motionless in the void, suspended within the incomprehensible rift. The ship's system struggled to adapt, the reality around them bending in ways that defied reason. Time itself seemed to stretch and compress, as though it were a mere suggestion. The crew had no bearings, no way to measure distance or time. The usual data readouts on their consoles were blank, replaced by strange symbols and colors that made no sense. Captain, Drayden's voice was shaky, the uncertainty in his tone unmistakable. We've entered some kind of pocket dimension. There's no consistent flow of time. I can't even track our location relative to anything. Ileana stood at the command deck, her expression grim. The ship's sensors were useless in this space, the physics of this place far beyond their comprehension. The reality around them felt wrong. The distant, twisted structures and floating cities seemed to defy logic, their massive forms suspended in the infinite abyss like ancient relics. Relics that were far older than anything humanity had encountered. But worse still was the overwhelming presence of the creature, the entity that had brought them here. Ileana felt his gaze on them, even though it had not physically moved. It was everywhere, its tendrils weaving through the very fabric of this alien dimension. She could almost hear its thoughts in the back of her mind, a whisper that tugged at the edges of her consciousness, urging her to give up, to accept the inevitable. You've entered my domain. The voice of the creature reverberated through the ship, deep and terrifying. The galaxy is mine. You should have never come here. Ileana's heart raced. There was no denying the enormity of the threat. They were no longer fighting just for their survival, or even humanity's survival. They were facing something that existed outside the bounds of known space and time, something so old that its existence seemed to predate everything else in the universe. "We haven't come here to die," Ileana said, her voice steely despite the overwhelming odds. "We came here to end this, to stop you." There was a long pause before the creature responded, its voice colder than before. "You misunderstand. You cannot stop me. I have waited eons for this moment. You are but a fleeting annoyance, a spark in the dark." The air around the sovereign thickened, as if the very atmosphere of this place was pressing against them, making every breath feel heavier, every movement more difficult. The entity's presence loomed over them like an all-consuming shadow. Ileana clenched her fists, her resolve strengthening. They had come this far, and they would not go down without a fight. "Captain," Zhang spoke up from her station, "I've managed to tap into a strange signal. It's coming from a massive structure in the distance, far larger than anything we've seen so far. It could be the source of the creature's power, or some kind of control center. We might be able to use it against it." Ileana's eyes narrowed. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had. "Set a course for that structure," she commanded. "We go in full speed, whatever it takes." The Sovereign surged forward, its engines roaring to life despite the limitations of this warped dimension. The strange structures around them seemed to shift, their angles and forms distorting as they passed, as though they were watching the ship move. Every part of the ship felt like it was stretching in two directions at once, its systems flickering, as though they were being pulled apart by the very fabric of the dimension. As they approached the enormous structure, it became clear that it was not a building. It was something much more alive. The surface rippled like liquid metal, constantly changing and evolving, as though it were in a constant state of flux. The sheer scale of it was enough to make even the bravest warrior feel insignificant. "We're going to need to dock on that thing," Drayden said, his voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "But I don't know how we're supposed to dock on something that doesn't even have a set shape." "We'll make it work," Ileana replied, her gaze unwavering. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going inside." As the Sovereign drew closer, the ship's hull vibrated violently, the pressure of this alien dimension pushing against them. Ileana felt the pressure intensify, a deep, unnatural pull as though the structure itself were calling to them. Her heart pounded in her chest. The creature was aware of their intentions, and it would do everything in its power to stop them. "You are nothing," the creature's voice whispered, its tone now filled with something akin to pity. "You are mere insects, scurrying in my domain. I have wiped out countless species like you before. You will be no different." But Ileana would not be cowed. She had seen the depths of despair and death before. Humanity had faced destruction at the hands of the galaxy's greatest powers and survived. Now, they faced a new kind of enemy, something that existed beyond the realms of imagination, but they would not yield. With a final lurch, the Sovereign docked on the shifting surface of the massive structure. The crew scrambled into position, weapons drawn, hearts pounding in their chests. "All right," Ileana said, her voice firm, "this is it. We go in, we fight, and we end this. For humanity." The air around them felt thick with the strange energy of the structure. As they stepped out of the Sovereign and onto the liquid-like surface, Ileana felt a cold chill run down her spine. This place, this thing, was alive, and it was watching them. Every movement, every breath felt like an intrusion, like they were trespassing on something that should never have been disturbed. But there was no turning back now. Ahead of them, deep within the heart of the structure, a faint light pulsed in the distance. A beacon, a guide to whatever secrets the creature had been hiding for eons. And it was there that Ileana knew they would either find the key to stopping the entity or face total annihilation. "Move out," Ileana ordered, her voice steady, though every fiber of her being screamed to turn back. They advanced cautiously, weapons raised, every sense heightened. The air vibrated with the sound of the entity's voice, now quieter but still ever present in the back of their minds. "Do you think you can stop me?" the the creature asked, its voice a low growl, filled with dark amusement. You are nothing but a fleeting illusion. The galaxy will belong to me once again. Ileana's grip tightened on her weapon. We're not illusions. We're humanity, and we don't give up. The air in the massive, shifting structure grew colder the deeper the crew of the Sovereign ventured. Each step they took felt as if they were pushing against the very fabric of reality, the weight of the alien presence pressing down on them. The walls, if they could even be called walls, rippled like water, their surface both solid and liquid at the same time. The faint light ahead pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic beat, as though it were a living heart pumping in time with the pulse of the dimension itself. Ileana led the way, her mind sharp despite the overwhelming sense of wrongness that filled the air. The ship was silent, save for the occasional breath of the crew, their steps cautious, as though even the smallest sound might attract the attention of something ancient and unspeakable. They were in the belly of the beast now, and there was no turning back. This was the heart of the creature's domain. Captain, Drayden's voice was quiet but urgent. This place. I've never felt anything like it. It's like we're not just walking through space, but through something more. Like we're walking through the memories of the universe itself. Ileana didn't respond immediately. Her mind focused on the pulsing light ahead. She could feel it now, the subtle hum of something vast and ancient at the center of this structure. A power that thrummed through her bones, a pull she could not ignore. But there was something else beneath it, a shadow, a presence that was watching them, studying them. We need to get to the center, Ileana said, her voice firm. That's where we'll find the heart of the creature's power. Zhang, her face pale and tense, spoke up next. Captain, I've been trying to scan the area, but the structure keeps distorting my readings. It's as if this place is constantly shifting like it's alive. The words sent a chill down Ileana's spine, but she pressed on, unwilling to show any sign of weakness. Keep trying, Zhang. We're not turning back. As they continued through the winding corridors of the alien structure, the crew's fear began to mount. The walls seemed to stretch and contract around them, the very space they walked through distorting and warping as if the laws of physics no longer applied. Time was no longer their ally. They had no way of knowing how long they had been walking, minutes, hours, maybe days, but it was irrelevant. They were in a place where time itself had lost its meaning. Finally, they arrived at the central chamber. It was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. The vast room stretched out into the distance, its walls shifting like liquid mercury, pulsing with a strange, otherworldly glow. In the center of the chamber, suspended in midair, was a massive, glowing crystal, its surface alive with energy. The light radiating from it was both blinding and comforting, beckoning them closer. And, at the heart of the crystal, there was something else, a figure. It was humanoid in shape, but it was not human. It was made of the same shifting, liquid-like material as the structure around them, its form constantly changing, as though it could never settle into one shape. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed with an unnatural light, and the air around it seemed to vibrate with its presence. The creature they had been fighting, the one who had led them here, was not just an entity. It was the very essence of this place, this dimension. Welcome, humans. The voice of the creature boomed inside their minds, overwhelming and omnipresent. You have done well to make it this far. But your journey ends here. Ileana stepped forward, her hand gripping her weapon, though she knew it was useless against something like this. We didn't come here to die. We came here to stop you. The creature's form rippled, and for a moment it seemed to laugh, a deep, guttural sound that shook the very foundations of the chamber. You think you can stop me? I am the master of this place. I have existed since before your ancestors crawled from the mud. You are but a fleeting spark in the infinite darkness. We don't care how old you are, Drayden said, stepping up beside Ileana, his voice filled with defiance. We care about our future. You can't just erase humanity. The creature paused, a flicker of something akin to amusement in its endless gaze. You don't understand, do you? I am not here to erase you. I am here to preserve you. Every species, every civilization, is a part of the galaxy's great cycle. You are nothing more than a piece of the puzzle. A fleeting moment in time, like all the others. Ileana's breath quickened. You want to control us. To subjugate us, like you've done to countless other species before. The creature's form shifted again, its tendrils undulating around the crystal like living wires. It is not control. It is the inevitable evolution of the galaxy. Order must be established, and all must be brought into the fold. Only then will the chaos cease. Zhang shook her head, her eyes wide. You think you're some kind of savior? You think subjugating us will bring peace? It is the only way, the creature intoned, its voice cold and final. The galaxy is flawed, divided. But I will bring unity. I will bring the end of all strife. Ileana's mind raced. They couldn't let this thing succeed. It was too powerful, too ancient. But there had to be a way to stop it. She looked at Drayden, who met her gaze. A silent understanding passed between them. They had one last chance. They needed to destroy the crystal, the heart of the creature's power. But to do so, they would have to face it head-on. The power coursing through the crystal was the key to everything. And if they could sever it... Zhang, can you hack into that thing's core? Ileana asked, her voice low but determined. Zhang nodded, her eyes narrowing in concentration. I'll try. But if this thing is as connected to the crystal as I think it is, we're talking about a full-scale battle to control it. Ileana turned to Drayden and the others. Get ready. If Zhang can't shut it down, we'll have to destroy it the old-fashioned way. But we don't have much time. The creature's presence intensified, its eyes locking onto Ileana with a chilling intensity. You think you can stop me? You are nothing. Then we'll show you that nothing can stop humanity, Ileana replied, her voice sharp with resolve. The final battle had begun. The chamber shuddered. Tendrils of energy lashed from the walls, arcing like lightning across the void, and the ancient creature's voice roared in every mind like a tidal wave of fury. The crystal pulsed brighter now, its light becoming blinding, its hum deafening. The alien entity, this self-declared guardian of galactic order, had finally dropped all pretense of detachment. It was afraid. Zhang knelt beside a panel of flowing alien architecture, her fingers moving in sync with patterns that weren't meant for human minds. The interface kept shifting, trying to confuse her, to force her out, but she pressed on. Sweat rolled down her temples as the ship's systems synced with the crystal's frequency. Captain, she shouted over the chaos. I'm in barely. But whatever's powering this, it's alive. I can't shut it down. It's tied to that thing. If we destroy the crystal, we destroy it. But we destroy everything in this dimension with it, Ileana finished grimly. Drayden fired into one of the tendrils, snaking toward them. The blast useless against a being that bent time and matter like wet clay. This whole place is built around it. Kill the heart, kill the beast, and this pocket dimension collapses. Which means we don't get out unless we bring it down fast and find a way home faster, Ileana said. She turned to Zhang. You said we're synced? Barely, Zhang replied. I can give you a surge. One shot, Captain. But it has to be manual. Someone's got to take the core charge directly into the crystal chamber. Ileana didn't hesitate. Give me the charge. No, Drayden growled. No way. We do this together, Captain. She met his eyes, and for a moment the chaos faded. We've come this far because of you. Because of all of you. But this is my burden. My command. My crew. We don't do this alone, Drayden said. Suddenly, the chamber pulsed violently. A tear opened in the air beside them, space itself splitting, revealing flashes of other dimensions, realities folding in on one another. The entity screamed, a sound not made by vocal cords, but by the unraveling of reality itself. The crystal was vulnerable now, exposed. Zhang tossed the core charge to Ileana. Now or never. Ileana caught it and ran, the weight of the explosive device barely noticeable compared to the pressure in her chest. The path to the crystal seemed infinite, every step warped by dimensional interference, her body pulled in unnatural directions. She pushed on, each stride taking every ounce of willpower she had left. Behind her, the team fought to hold back the tendrils. Even in its death throes, the creature refused to let go. The air crackled with dark energy. The very ground beneath them splintered and dissolved. Ileana reached the core. It was massive, glowing brighter now than any star. And in it she saw memories, not just of the creature, but of every species it had consumed, enslaved, or erased. Civilizations billions of years old, trapped in looping agony. She saw a future where humanity joined them. And she saw something else. A choice. A whisper in her mind. You could save them. You could become like me. Eternal. All-powerful. Guide the galaxy to peace. Her hand trembled over the activation switch. It would be so easy. The offer was real. The creature didn't lie. It didn't have to. It showed her 1,000 perfect futures, where humanity rose to unmatched power, worshipped as gods. She could end pain forever. But she saw the cost. Freedom. Choice. Wonder. Everything that made humans human. No, she whispered. She slammed the charge into the crystal. Light erupted. A scream echoed through infinity, part rage, part despair, part release. The crystal cracked. From the Sovereign, Zhang and Drayden saw the chamber collapse, the creature's form shattering like glass under pressure it could no longer contain. The walls tore open. The dimension around them began to disintegrate. She did it. Zhang gasped. But if we don't get out now... Drayden grabbed the controls, initiating emergency phase jump. But we don't have a target. We're going home. The Sovereign twisted in space. Zhang rerouted the last of the core power into the jump drive. The ship spun through unraveling time, through dimensions collapsing like dominoes. And then, silence. Stars. Normal space. The Sovereign emerged into orbit above Earth. Scarred. Shaking. But intact. The crew stood in stunned silence. The impossible had been done. The ancient being, the godlike jailer of a forgotten age, was gone. Forever. And humanity had been the one to do it. A transmission burst across the galaxy soon after, spreading from relay to relay, translated by every known species. The story of the Sovereign, of Captain Ileana Carter, of the crew who stepped into the unknown and destroyed a being the galaxy had feared for eons. And then silence. The galaxy waited. Some species feared what humanity might become. Others began to hope. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the balance of power had shifted. Not because of weapons. Not because of numbers. But because of will. Because humanity, fragile and young, did the impossible and changed the galaxy forever.